Bitcoiners don't sound crazy because they're wrong. They sound crazy because they're early. Every major technology that rewired civilization looked absurd before it became obvious. Electricity looked dangerous, cars looked impractical, Amazon looked like a dot-com joke, Tesla looked impossible. Bitcoin looks fake to people who still trust the broken money. I'm going to talk today about why Bitcoiners aren't crazy. We're just really early. Yo, and what is up, Bitcoin entrepreneurs? My name is Chris, and I am the host of the Bitcoin Entrepreneur Show. And today we have an exciting topic because I wanted to explain how Bitcoiners aren't crazy. We're just early. So before we get right into that, I want to bring up the Bitcoin price as of this moment is $78,203. I like to do that. I like a little timestamp on these videos. I think it's cool to have a timeline of the Bitcoin price because I believe that the Bitcoin price is going to go way high and that we're still very early in, for what the Bitcoin network is going to turn out to be in the upcoming years in our lifetime. So before that, don't forget to subscribe and like to the channel. It helps out tremendously. And also I would recommend you join the school group because we have a massive classroom that has a ton of educational materials you can get from there, and also is just a community, and we're building that just like we're building this channel. Also, what you could do is if you go to my website, it's a new domain now. It is chriscyber.vip. You can become an affiliate and you can sell my book for yourself, and you'll get a commission payment in Bitcoin or dollars, whatever you decide on that. Check out the links in the description to support the channel and to, gain access to everything I just brought up there. Also, let me just bring up, this is not financial advice. There we go. We're all ready to go because now the lawyers can't touch us. So let's just get right into this. So I feel like this episode is going to be more of like a presentation because I'm going to be reading off my notes a lot because I've jotted down a lot of notes, let me tell you, on why that I think Bitcoiners are not crazy. They're just early. I mean, people say tons of stuff. People say a ton of shit about, Bitcoiners are in a cult. Bitcoiners are, it's like a religion. I mean, you could argue that to some extent, like, sure. But at the same time, it's like, we're just working towards a better financial system because the current financial system we have is garbage. I mean, would you rather be in a, system where the money is broken or a system of truth and deflation and free markets? I mean, to anybody with any sort of logic and an understanding of the Bitcoin network in basic way would understand why we are trying to do this. This is a movement, and people are not really good at recognizing paradigm shifts while they're happening. So that's a big point of this presentation. So let's get straight into this. I have some points here that Bitcoiners sound extreme when we're talking about these different topics, right? Like fiat is broken, which in reality is a fact. I mean, there's no arguing this. The fiat system is a shit heap, right? We're in massive amounts of debt. It's a debt-based system. America is a cheap credit card because everything that America does is to pay off the debt. But the problem is it's impossible to pay off $40 trillion. I mean, come on, like $40 trillion. What's the interest rate on that? What's the, like, absolutely crazy that we're dealing in this massive deficit, right? Self-custody completely matters. People, like, there's no argument against these things. 21 million supply cap on the Bitcoin network is huge. Proof of work is digital energy. Banks are just the middlemen. But all these major shifts sound ridiculous if you're still trapped in the fiat system, right? So something that like the public who necessarily aren't into Bitcoin would be like, oh, why would we need that? Who would use that Isn't that dangerous? Is it a scam? Isn't the old system good enough? These are valid questions, but if you were trying to hear a solution to that, it would be Bitcoin. But people just don't understand how the Bitcoin network actually works. They're not privy to all this information. They don't understand it because Bitcoin is something that you would have to study and actually learn about in order to understand why it's a paradigm shift and it's a better financial system. But in order to do that, it all starts with curiosity. You have to be able to want to learn about it. You're not going to spend 100 hours over the course of a long period of time to try to learn about all this stuff if you just really don't care. Like, I have friends that are just super into sports or cars or something like this, or even just their job, right? And they don't care about learning about the Bitcoin network. But what they don't realize is that they're in a broken system and they're the main people that are getting hurt from it. So let's just bring up a couple of these examples from history that will show that Bitcoiners aren't crazy. We're just early. So for one, let's get into electricity. People asked in the late 1800s, why would anybody need that? It was not obvious because they had their systems. They figured that electricity was just completely dangerous and expensive, and it was like an experimental, scenario, idea, invention that was not tested, and they didn't know anything about it. People were just scared of it. But clearly, we could tell nowadays that Bitcoin or electricity was something that was completely necessary in order to run the civilization. Even up to today, we still use the same electricity, right? But back then, it was a weird paradigm shift, and people didn't get it. It was expensive, experimental, right? So let's just read through a couple of these points here. So before the power grid, electricity was fragmented, right? Service was limited to certain city areas. So it was it was hard to, it didn't seem efficient, right? People used to use candles and gas lamps, fire, horses, and manual labor. And so electricity would require a completely new infrastructure, which would require generators, wires, substations, appliances. Obviously, with all this would come safety standards, trust from the public, and this is kind of parallel to Bitcoin, because Bitcoin today is like electricity when it didn't have the full grid. So people, just like the questions that people would ask for electricity, people ask the same questions essentially for Bitcoin. What do I do with it? Why is self-custody hard? Why does mining require energy? Why doesn't everybody just accept it yet? It's the same types of answers. The network is still being built. Electricity was not just a product, it became the invisible layer underneath the modern life. So in the same way, Bitcoin would become the invisible layer underneath the modern money system. So you can compare these two, right? At first, electricity looked dangerous. Eventually, it became the base layer of civilization. We still use it right now. I mean, literally, you are watching me right now through electricity. Obviously, there's a lot of other components that are on top of that, but that's the point. There's layers built on top of this base that we've set. If there was no electricity, you wouldn't have a phone or a computer or an iPad or the internet, anything, right? So you can conversely say Bitcoin would be the base layer of the financial situation of a civilization. Guess what? Another comparison here would be cars, right? I mean, people used to ride horses. animals, right? I mean, people used to use donkeys, horses, mules, which are all a breeding concoction of all three of those. And automobiles initially were mocked, and they were noisy, unreliable, expensive, inconvenient, compared to like what people understood about horses, because they were just kind of like, oh, you just give them water, you give them food, you stable them up, and you got horses, easy peasy. But cars were like a passing fad. It wasn't like permanent. There were times where people had cars, but then people also had horses, right? But then you had someone like Henry Ford, who was like a pioneer in the car industry, obviously. And it was 1903 that the Ford Motor Company was founded, and only 11,235 automobiles were sold in America. By 1913, which is 10 years later, Ford's assembly line cut build time from about 12 hours to about 2.5 hours. So that's a big difference. And so that helped the production of automobiles like explode in the market, right? So if we break into this, horses had massive infrastructure. They had stables, feed supplies, blacksmiths, because of, the, what are they called? Horseshoes, whatnot. Carriage makers, horse dealers, systems built around them. Cars looked worse and way, more annoying and inefficient against them. But because of just delays in the technology of what, a car is, because there were no gas stations, the roads were dirt. Your cars broke down a lot. You can go fast and it's dangerous. It would be expensive to actually purchase and own a car. And like the people who owned the horses, they weren't stupid, but they were just very invested into the old system, right? Like imagine you had a stable full of horses and that was your business. And then all of a sudden cars were coming around that would make horses obsolete essentially over time. So then that's like a big bummer to you because you have all this money invested into these horses and the horse infrastructure, right? So this is like a parallel to Bitcoin, because fiat has massive infrastructure, right? They have banks, credit cards, payment processors, central banks, tax systems, financial advisors, Wall Street products, debt markets, right? So Bitcoin looks inconvenient at first, but the car did not win because it was perfect on day one, right? Like Bitcoin has wallets, seed phrases, volatility, custody, responsibility, tax confusion, and obviously like a learning curve, because at the end of the day, this is computer science, right? And a lot of people don't even know about computers, they just use them, right? So you could see how this would be parallel. So cars won because they had a better long-term trajectory. So you can say the same thing necessarily about Bitcoin, right? The horse had a better infrastructure than the car, but it did not mean that the horse had a better future, because there was a lot of downsides to the horse too. I mean, horses died, right? Like obviously cars die too, but a car can get you way farther than a horse can in the time, and you can manage a car. It's like you just have to take care of a car and it'll live for a long, long, long time. It's just horses just became a thing that would be like a novelty and obsolete. Obviously, this is the modern day. Like you never see a horse on a highway, right? I mean, it's all cars. We have many cars. So if we were going to look towards another option, because again, there's many of these options here, Amazon, right? Like Amazon, you all know Amazon. It started as like an internet bookstore, and people just said constantly that it would never survive. This is just history. It was during the .com era. So like, just like the internet is a protocol. Bitcoin is a protocol. Protocols tend to be winner take all, and technologies tend to be winner take most. So it was completely being judged based on retail because people were invested in retail. and the idea that you have to go out and buy things. But now, guess what? People use Amazon literally constantly. It's probably I used Amazon literally today. I bought something on Amazon today. So let's just read you this right here. During the 2000 crash period, Amazon told shareholders its stock was down more than 80%, while the business itself had grown from 14 million customers in 1999 to 20 million in 2000, with sales rising from 1.64 billion to 2.76 billion. In 2001, Amazon laid off about 1,300 employees, roughly 15% of its staff, while trying to reach its profitability. So Wall Street saw its losses, the chaos, and the dot-com bubble, no profits, and that it's an online bookstore, right? But what Bezos saw, meaning Jeff Bezos, you know who Jeff Bezos is, everybody does. What he saw was customer obsession. He saw the logistics, the scale of the internet that potentially it had, how it was long-term infrastructure, how it was distribution dominance, and guess what? We can parallel this to Bitcoin. Okay, so critics of Bitcoin would see volatility, scams in crypto, mining headlines, price crashes, no intrinsic value, right? But what the Bitcoiners see would be fixed supply, global settlement, censorship resistance, decentralized security, monetary infrastructure, property rights and cyberspace, and a philosophical anchor. So, same thing, right? The market often misunderstands infrastructure while it's still being built. So Amazon was clearly not just a bookstore, and Bitcoin is clearly not just a coin, right? So Amazon looked like a bad bookstore at the time. This was the sentiment. Bitcoin looks like bad money today to many people. But both of these judgments just miss the point of the entire network. So let's get into another example, which would be Tesla. Again, these are things I'm bringing up that everybody knows, right? Tesla started out as electric cars will never work. That was the historical context of Tesla. It looked ridiculous for many, many years. They were viewed as expensive, impractical, short range, and impossible to scale. And Tesla, this is like a famous story from Elon. Tesla nearly collapsed in the 2008 financial crisis because the capital wasn't there essentially, and the company was fighting to survive. It required solving not just the car problem, but the entire system around the car. So battery, software, charging, manufacturing, brand, and energy infrastructure. So these are, more points that are parallel to Bitcoin. So what critics said about Tesla would be that electric vehicles are more like toys, batteries are too expensive, the range is too low, legacy automakers will crush Tesla, nobody wants electric cars, the company will go bankrupt. And Tesla's actual insights here were that the software defined the car, the battery cost curves, we could build charging networks, it's a direct-to-consumer model, energy, ecosystem, and obviously you can parallel these to Bitcoin. Again, these are my examples, right? So Bitcoin critics would say it's too slow, it's too volatile. The governments will ban it, quantum computers will break it, banks will copy it, nobody will use it, it uses too much energy. But the actual insights within the Bitcoin network are that it has monetary finality. It's proof of work, security. So, it can't be lied. Predictable issuance, it's capped, and it's mathematical. Decentralized consensus, absolute scarcity. There's no CEO, and there's no, there's no board within the Bitcoin network. There's no monetary committee that's involved. And the future often looks inefficient because it is solving a deeper problem than the present system can even recognize, right? So Tesla, it wasn't just replacing gas, it was changing the architecture of the transportation as we know it. So Bitcoin is not just replacing payments, it is changing the architecture of trust as we know it, right? So let's dig into the psychology here a little bit of why early believers looked crazy, right? Early believers see the invisible part of the iceberg. The crowd only sees the visible inconvenience. So early adopters are judged on the current usability, current volatility, current friction, current skepticism, current headlines. But revolutions should be judged on the direction, incentives, network effects, cost curves, infrastructure build out, problem severity, long-term superiority, and Bitcoin-specific psychology. So, big point here, most people do not understand Bitcoin because they don't understand money. Like I said in the beginning here, Bitcoin starts with curiosity, and then you actually have to spend time understanding the system to be able to actually understand what is all being talked about here, right? If you don't know anything about Bitcoin and you're just taking it from a very surface level, you're not going to understand what's going on. I mean, it's just this is how it works. You can't have understanding of something without understanding how it actually works. Like not speculation, but like how it actually works, right? So people normally would just assume that dollars are fine, they're normal, right? Inflation is normal, like they've said. Banks are necessary. Getting into debt is completely natural, and saving your savings losing value is just how it goes. It's like that's how it goes, obviously, but there's no question to say that that's like a shitty system. It doesn't work great, right? I mean, you have an inflation rate, and then you have a savings account, and the savings account on the biggest banks in the world give you like half of an interest rate against what the inflation rate is. So it's like you're losing half of that. You're losing half of your money. I mean, at this point, it's like people just need to understand how money works and how the systems work, because otherwise they're just completely unaware, right? So like, this is another great point. Bitcoin does not only change your portfolio, but it challenges your worldview, right? And that just goes into exactly what I was just saying a second ago. So let's bring this up real quick. Why the crowd always defends the old system. So the main idea here would be that people defend the system that feeds them even though it weakens them. But the whole thing is they don't really know it weakens them. They might not understand that, and that's not the fault of anybody. It's just you didn't learn about how money works. Like, again, you're not curious about the system. You just think it's in its own ways. So let's compare all of the examples I gave you earlier from the old system of how people would defend it. So let's go into electricity. So people would defend the old system as like you have electricity. So gas lighting businesses would clearly be affected by electricity. You have DC power interests. So you have people that were running things would be questioning this new system, right? Because they would want to be in that system that would become a new protocol for civilization. And all the old infrastructure was running off of things like, like we just brought up before, like gas-powered lighting and candles, shit like that, right? So then bring up cars. We have with the people who would be against the car industry would be the horse dealers, the carriage makers, the stable owners, and the city built systems around horses, right? Because like the cities would have a lot invested into that. Amazon, malls, bookstores, traditional retail, Like all of those would be against Amazon, right? So Tesla, we would have the oil industry, they're selling gas, the legacy auto systems, obviously because they're working on combustion engines, they're not working on electric engines, and the dealership networks, because clearly they're in the business of selling cars. They're not necessarily in the business of selling electric cars. It's like a whole new paradigm, right? And then Bitcoin, the defenders of the old system against Bitcoin would be banks, central banks, payment processors, economists, debt-based institutions, and people whose career depend on the current system. So like, maybe like accountants or people or the people who run the credit card companies, So what I'm saying here is that resistance to a new thing isn't always logical, obviously. It's just you are invested in a system, so you want to keep it running, right? So sometimes it's not just that you're being like an asshole, it's that it's economic self-defense. Like we go back, if you had the oil industry would obviously be against Tesla because that would mean that people would have cars that would be able to be charged through batteries. So then that eliminates like a lot of gas infrastructure from oil industries, right? That's just one example. And you can go through all these examples, obviously, but that's just the point. So a lot of people would say like this whole idea of like paradigm shifts and stuff, dangerous, stupid, unnecessary, and impossible. But guess what? This was said about all the different paradigm shifts. So Bitcoin is obviously in hindsight, it's obviously a technology that's inevitable down the road. I mean, this isn't speculation. Just look into it. Bitcoin is the best performing asset of the last, decade. It's incredible. Almost 20 years. It's an amazing asset, and the market is showing that this is the case. This isn't just being crazy, right? So all of the things that Bitcoin claims is said to be crazy via the public, because most people still don't hold Bitcoin, but you're going to see in the future why that is clearly a bad idea. So let's just go through these Bitcoin claims that are deemed crazy by the public. 21 million supply matters, a capped supply. People think that inflation is good for a civilization, right? But there's no evidence behind that. Proof of work matters, right? So they're worried about an energy-based system. They're saying that it's a crazy claim. So these are the crazy claims. I'm sure you get it by now that people say. So let me just read off all these. You know what I'm saying at this point. So another one would be self-custody matters, decentralization matters, fiat debasement is real, banks make more money from your money, monetary policy is not neutral, saving in broken money changes human behavior, why these may become, and a point is why these may become obvious. Debt systems require expansion, fiat currencies lose purchasing power over time, central banks respond to crisis with liquidity, Bitcoin cannot be printed, Bitcoin has global liquidity, Bitcoin is programmable, Bitcoin rewards patience, Bitcoin makes savings possible again. So these are what people say are crazy claims, but it's the backbone of why Bitcoin is the greatest asset ever. So Bitcoin may be the first money in history that does not ask humans to be honest, because it removes the trust from the center and replaces it with verification. So instead of making false claims, you have to verify. There's no way around the verification method with Bitcoin. So what we have is a paradigm shift that is happening right before our eyes. But people are too deep into the other system to be able to even understand that what we're dealing with is inevitable. So they're scared to get in, but it's because they're not necessarily understanding why that the fiat system is completely a sham, and you're actually, while you're rooting for the dollar system, you're getting stolen from. So the future is not adopted all at once, right? It is adopted layer by layer until the resistance of the network becomes irrelevant. And this is how protocols work, because protocols are winner take all, and Bitcoin is a protocol of the monetary structure. So the Bitcoin difference here would be there's no company, there's no CEO, there's no bailouts. And if we were to contrast these with other, revolutions, electricity had companies, cars had manufacturers, Amazon had Bezos, Tesla had Elon, right? Guess what? Bitcoin has no CEO, no headquarters, no marketing department, no central server, no monetary policy committee, no bailout mechanism, no one who can change the 21 million, and unless it was complete consensus with the network, which isn't going to happen. And the reason why this all matters is because Bitcoin is not a company trying to be profitable or trying to be just execute the different new things that civilians would want. Bitcoin is a protocol, right? So it's something that's going to run within its rules forever, assuming that everybody agrees on them. But the difference is the whole node system, where every node has to agree with the changes in the system. And we have many Bitcoiners out there that are not trying to change anything, as I am, and I do run a node. So the networks typically survive because the participants are economically aligned. The miners secure it, the nodes verify it, the users value it, developers improve it, markets price it, and no single group controls it. Bitcoin is not a business. Bitcoin is a truth machine with a market price. Very interesting points, right? If you just hear that, you would understand why we are dealing with a paradigm shift that just people don't understand yet. But they will eventually, trust me. And my best opinion to you is to get in on it while you can, because we're still at a $78,000 price point for Bitcoin, and that is a very, very, very cheap price point. So with all that being said, it's just like the whole synopsis here would be like, banks feel safe because they are familiar. Dollars, they feel stable because prices are quoted in dollars, right? But the value of your dollars changes. So you have $1,000 in the bank. 5 years later, that $5,000 or that $1,000 in the bank isn't going to buy you nearly as much because it's being devalued. So your savings essentially aren't really savings. Your savings are just mitigating the losses a little bit. So that's a shitty system if you really think about it. Inflation feels normal because everybody suffers together. So everybody's losing the same amount. So it feels the same. So everybody just goes, oil prices are high. Or housing has gone up, but I still make the same amount of money as my job. Everybody says that shit. That's normal. So it seems normal. Debt feels normal because everybody is trapped in it. Everybody has a student loan. Everybody goes to college. Everybody has a credit card, right? But what you're not understanding is that you have a 25% interest rate on your credit card. Terrible. You're getting wrecked. Even if you have a good credit score, you have a terrible interest rate on your credit card. Debt has terrible interest rates. Even college loans have massive interest rates in terms of just the fact that you're paying them off over long periods of time. Same thing with a mortgage. You're paying them off over massive periods of time. Mortgage literally means agreement till death in Latin or something. I could be wrong there, but I'm pretty sure that's what the case is. Let's get back into this. Retirement accounts feel safe because the institutions manage them. But it doesn't matter. You're still dealing with the dollar, which is inflating, and you're ruining the purchasing power on them. So the amount of money you're getting in terms of like compounding and interest rates doesn't matter that much, because you're still losing money. And the custodians that you feel are safe is because like personal responsibility is scary. Like if you had to hold all of your money, it would be scary. But guess what? Like Bitcoin flips this entire system, because you hold the asset, you are the custodian, you are completely responsible to the custodian. And argue to me why having more responsibility wouldn't be better. Like that's better. That's how things have been forever. Like if you held your gold way back in the cowboy days, you were responsible for the gold. Like if bandits came and took your gold, then that sucks, but it's like you were responsible for the gold. It wasn't like you had gold in a vault by JP Morgan, but then all of a sudden JP Morgan goes and sells your gold. And then you want to take your gold out of there one day, and then they say, "Oh no, like we can't do that right now. Like you have to wait, like for your own money. You have to wait for the money to be able to be given to you, because we don't actually have it in reserves." Within Bitcoin, you hold the asset, you verify the supply, you control your own private keys, you're exiting the inflation game, you become responsible for your Bitcoin. And a philosophical side to this be freedom feels dangerous to people trained for dependency. So this is pretty much what everybody is. They're all trained to want to be taken care of by central banks and the government, but that's way crazier than thinking Bitcoin is crazy. You just don't understand it yet because you're so deep into the system of fiat. And also, Bitcoin gives people ownership before they are like necessarily emotionally ready for it, because again, you're so deeply indebted into the system. So a little bit further to this whole synopsis of this video would be bringing all the examples back, right? So electricity sounded dangerous, cars sounded impractical, Amazon sounded delusional, Tesla sounded impossible, and Bitcoin sounds crazy. But history keeps showing the same thing, that the future starts out as a joke, it becomes a threat, and then it becomes completely normal. Bitcoiners may sound crazy because they are describing a world most people have not entered yet. And that is absolutely true, but that is absolutely true as to why you should be getting in. And at the beginning of this video, I said this is not financial advice, obviously. Do your own research, figure out what your values are and what you think is the best option, and then proceed with that. So for like a final philosophical thought that I have, that I wrote down in my notes for this presentation, is that Bitcoiners may sound crazy because they are describing a world that most people have not entered yet. A world where money is scarce, savings are protected, work can be silently diluted, ownership does not require permission, and truth is verified instead of trust. The Bitcoiner is not crazy for questioning the system. The crazy part is living inside a monetary printer and calling that normal. So with all that being said, I hope you can take a lot of this in and really think about it. And I really do hope that more people join the Bitcoin network. I appreciate you all listening to me while I rant on these topics in a kind of unorganized way, but it's okay. We're still learning and we're still growing this channel. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button if you like this content, and also drop a recommendation in the comments if you want to recommend something that I could be doing on this channel that, you know, maybe you would want to see more of. If you want to support the channel, go get 10% off your Tangem wallet, your cold storage wallet, in the link below. You can also buy my book. It is $10 off on my website in PDF form, and you can still get it in hardcover. You can get this exact copy on Amazon. Links are in the bio. Join the Squirrel group. I appreciate all of you, and I will see you next week at the same time on a Saturday. I appreciate all of you. Peace.